operate in truth, right? Operate in truth. Tell the truth.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Gator Truth. On this episode, we're taking a look back at the Gators' loss to South Florida, 18-16, this past Saturday in the Swamp. This one is being released a little bit later. Sometimes life happens, and you just got to step away for a moment. I will say the review episode of LSU will come out a little later next week as well, as I do not get home from Louisiana until late on Sunday night. And I don't feel like dragging stuff for doing a podcast all around downtown New Orleans on Sunday. With that said, let's talk about the Gators loss. Obviously frustrating. We'll go through, what I thought the keys were, what worked, what didn't work, and then just give my thoughts on the Gators situation at the end. Of course, congrats to USF with the big win in Gainesville for you guys. But at the same time, very frustrating for us as Gator fans. So let's go ahead. Let's look at what I had for the keys. First thing is, I wanted to run the ball, as I put it. And I'm sure a lot of people have said that as well. Wanted to see him get a majority of carries. He did. He got 18 of the Gators' 31 carries. He had 93 yards, averaging 5.2 yards per carry. 51 of those yards were on the first drive, and it was kind of frustrating watching him not really do things like start the second half or get more run when Jacoby Jackson was not having the best day. Granted, he did break that touchdown run that was called back on a penalty. But with that said, outside of that run, Jacoby Jackson officially 6 carries, 22 yards, 3.7 yards per carry, which is not where you want your running backs to be. But anyways, so obviously didn't really run the ball as much as I would have liked, especially when we got the ball with, less than 3 minutes and the offense only ran, 12 seconds? The offense ran off the clock and it was like 27 seconds total. Just ridiculous time management issues. I also wanted to see that the offensive line and tight end position had improved blocking. Well, you don't need to have watched much of the game to be able to know that was not really the case. South Florida did only manage 1 sack, which was good. However, 7 tackles for loss. Not all that is necessarily on blocking. A good deal of it is, but also when you're doing things like, I don't know, throwing a bunch of predictable screens. There's reports on Twitter, whether you believe or not. Someone said my friend's son plays for USF, and they knew what Florida was running every play. Again, random person, so take it with a grain of salt, but it's not the first time that we've heard someone say that about this. Of course, I point out towards Miami's defensive coordinator, who they fired at the end of the year, saying that about the Gators as well. And the final key that I had about the offense is variety in the passing game. Kind of a mixed bag here. We did see some variety, but we did see a lot taken away, including a lot of deep passes. And with that said, that leads into a little bit of feelings on DJ Lagway's performance. I've seen some people blame DJ Lagway for the loss, and I honestly don't understand that. I'm not going to sit here and say he played the best game of his career, but the dude had a 69% completion rate, 23 of 33. He had 2 drops for sure that I can think of, because I do think that throw at the end of Vernell Brown should have been caught. And obviously, Westbrook's drop in the end zone on, I believe it was the first drive of the game, should have been a touchdown and ended up settling for a field goal. And anyways, you take that's 8 incompletions, another incompletion on the deep shot, barely overthrows this guy. It's ruled an interception. There is a picture going around of, hey, here's the ball on the ground, but doesn't mean there is indisputable video evidence when the ref saw it. So on those 3, I'm kind of like, is what it is. And we're talking after that, there are 7 bad throws. And for sure, there were some bad misses. But to put this game on DJ Lagway, I think is very unserious, especially when we don't have and we've not seen a great intermediate passing game. South Florida seemed to really, hype up, taking away the deep ball from us for the most part, and then also playing the underneath game. And when you play the underneath game and you're taking away the deep shots, putting 1-2 high safety going into cover 3 and having your linebackers patrol the flat, you got to have the intermediate routes, and we didn't see too much of that. So that's where the variety kind of comes in. You're not helping your quarterback that way. You're not helping your team really that way. And I can tell you there are multiple times there were guys in the same area. Of course, one of them down near the goal line, granted incompletion, and then we threw a touchdown pass right after, and that's when he throws it to Hansen, DJ throws it to Hansen on his left, or throws it to Trey Wilson. Which one? We don't know. Why? Because they're in the same area. Trey Wilson jumps up with one hand and kind of knocks it the wrong way, or knocks it away. Doesn't come down with a catch, but also perhaps prevents an interception. Who knows how that would have turned out, but 2 guys in the same area is not good. Another time, I was sitting in the south end zone, so we could kind of see how the play is, laid out wide. And it looked like DJ was passing to a guy, and I'd have to look up which play it was, but the guy looked to be 10 yards down the field or so, and a guy coming across 5 yards grabs it or stops right in front of it. Either way, there's an opportunity there for a guy to get past, but another guy just steps right in front of it. Now, who was it to? Who knows? 2 guys in the same area. And that is a problem, not just because, congestion, but also because it's much easier if you're defending to have 2 guys in the same area so you don't have to move, or if one guy catches it, the other defender can come help, or, if you're kind of deep, instead of a deep safety having to pick which receiver they're going to try and double up on or take the top away from, it's easy for them to just stay in between and move to whichever one as the ball gets closer if there's a throw. So that is the problem, and something that we've seen for years. I can say, and I will talk about this later, going into the season, I really thought we'd see more of Russ Callaway's fingerprints. It made sense if you've seen the same announcement of a guy getting promoted 2 off seasons in a row, that you'll at least see fingerprints. And we've not really seen that with the first team offense, which is very frustrating. And that's even if Billy Napier stayed the play caller. It doesn't mean that things couldn't be adjusted a little bit more to help him out, at least in part of it. Of course, in his press conference today, this is being recorded on Monday, Billy confirms he's going to stay the play caller and was kind of ticked he even got asked the question. Well, dude, you've not finished with a top 50 offense at UF. I think it's a valid question. You're not as bad as, Doug Nussmeier being in the 110s, which was still defended by all of WRUF back in 2017. But with that said, you're not that bad, but you're not good. Why you wouldn't want help, why you don't want the best for your players in UF, I don't know. But that is a little bit more of a rant for later. Let's go ahead. Let's look at the defensive side. And for the defensive side, the first thing I said, let's hold Brown to less than 50 yards rushing. If we did that, I thought we'd have a good chance. Brown ended up with 66 yards rushing. His longest was 20, which I believe that 20-yard run came on the end of the first drive of the end of the last drive of the second half or first half. Man, I'm really just throwing it all together, aren't I? when Florida was up 9-3, it became a big run to allow, big run to get down to the 7 instead of kicking a 44-yard field goal. Grammatica only had to kick a, 25-yard field goal. Quite the difference in both difficulty and everything. Granted, he's a Grammatica. He's probably going to make it. Almost made a 57, 58-yarder to take the lead later in the game. But with that said, you go over that, didn't hold them to 50 yards, yelled them to 66, which isn't bad. Only three sacks, which is a problem. And I know I'm kind of skipping over to what I had down at the bottom, which is to get to Brown. And Boise State had 4 sacks. The fact that this team, even if you had a less than 100% LJ McCray, who's now out with foot surgery, if you didn't have Caleb Banks, you still should have been able to get more pressure. I will say this: Cam James on the defensive pass interference on the last drive of the game, I thought he got around. I thought he tipped the ball as it was being released from behind. If it's a tip ball, there's no pass interference, but it was called. I would say good pressure by Cam James on that. But with that said, it was called. And then, of course, the Brendan Bett incident, who the subtitle, if you're watching this on YouTube, it's kind of a reference to him, and we'll talk about that in a minute. And I will say that middle key, if you're looking on YouTube, if you're listening, the other defensive key I had was take away the deep ball. There were multiple hits by the Bulls against Boise State. In this game, there's really only one deep ball, and it was on a play that we had too many men on the field again. We were taking too long to get a play call in. Team's not even set. And what's funny about it is I'm sitting there with my niece's boyfriend. We're talking about, hey, go after them, because until they prove they can beat our DBs, continue to give them pressure, cause them problems. And then immediately they throw a 66-yard touchdown pass. I'll be honest, I looked down for a second, so I didn't see that we weren't set. And it actually made me more mad because we were doing so well. And then because we take forever to get play calls in, South Florida took advantage. And they had done it earlier in the game, but a bad throw kind of saved us. That is another issue that we've seen with this staff for years and years is, hey, guys aren't getting ready quick enough. And now South Florida has put on tape, hey, they're going to take their time. We're on offense. We control how long it takes. So you better think. Coaches like Brian Kelly, coaches like Mario Cristobal, Jeff Lebby at Mississippi State, they're going to see that and they're going to know, hey, if we sub, let's know what we're doing when we sub, because they're going to take their time subbing, and we can probably get them with a too many men on the field penalty and a free play if we take a shot, because they're not going to be ready. That is something that needs to be cleaned up, and that kind of leads us into the last thing I had for this game, which of course was few penalties, no special teams flag. Well, guess what? After 0 penalties for the Gators, after 0 penalties against LIU, the Gators end up with 11 penalties, 103 yards. There are 2 penalties that cost us touchdowns, a very good hold, a questionable offensive pass interference call, which is what it is. I mean, kind of looks like he's blocking, kind of looked like he's getting there, just trying to get his route. I don't know, but it was called. Obviously, I talked about the holding, but South Florida's first points were given to them on a basically by a penalty. We had them stopped. It was 4th down. And they were like, you know what? They've got too many men on. let's do this real quick. And they did, and they got the penalty. And again, they got a 66-yard touchdown on it later. They did this because they could. And it's something that we've seen. And finally, a team was like, let's take advantage. And I know I've said that. And it was just another killer penalty. And then, of course, special teams flags is what it is. But also, the difference in the score of this game, 18-16, instead of being 16-16, was the special teams gaff. Not really a penalty, but shooting the ball over your punter's head. And that's a very veteran long snapper in Underwood who did that. And literally, that's the 2-point difference in this game. It's because point two said we need intensity, we need the focus, it's higher competition, and we didn't seem to show that. JD Pickerel, who is a national commentator for those that don't know, basically said the Gators didn't look like they wanted to be there. And or I said Pickerel, it's Piquel. Either way, said it didn't look like the Gators wanted to be there and play. And, that reflection by him is a reflection on, is a reflection on the focus and intensity of this team. The exact quote was, Florida just looked obligated to be playing football yesterday. Not that they wanted to, not that they were trying to, they're just obligated. Like someone's obligated to go watch a 5-year-old's basketball game. Okay, I'm doing this. Now, granted, many people love that, but it's an obligation more than something some people want to do. But anyways, you do that, and it leads to this. Obviously, you don't have the focus or the urgency, and then also the focus. And I understand there are some audibles, probably should have taken those away on that last drive, where it's like you can run out the clock or do some of the clock run out, but you don't do it. You end up with 2 incompletions. You run off, like I said, I believe it was 27 total seconds off the clock. Just ridiculous. Giving South Florida time to march down the field and, win. And part of that was, again, going against few penalties. You had the bet penalty for spitting on the other team, which is, don't talk to me about culture when that's happening. Don't tell me it's out of character. Point is, you did it. And there's got to be, something about it, because in a way that costs the team the game. And I personally think it's fair to compare it to the Marco Wilson shoe throwing incident. Now you can compare which was worse or had the bigger impact, but it's still a stupid penalty someone did that definitely didn't need to happen, that they chose to do, that gave away 15 yards and gave life to another team. And there you go. Quite annoying. And then the one thing I can say the Gators really checked off, though, big return on a kickoff or punt. Well, Brown Jr. got a punt return and say big momentum boost. His big punt return returned it down. I believe the Gators he returned it to 35. There's a penalty. And then the Gators only had to go 20 yards for a touchdown, which was the only touchdown of the game, which is surprising. It is what it is. And 40 yards to 36. And then personal foul getting it to, I don't know, you get to 36 and the ball gets spotted on the 20, but I'll take it. But that's what I'm saying in the official play-by-play is down to 36, but still 40 yards momentum. We couldn't score touchdowns in the red zone all day, and we're doing 5 plays. Of course, again, we have ball running for 7, 4, 5, incompletion, touchdown pass. And again, ball running for at least 4 yards per carry. There's 3 more of the carries. Not sure what happened in between, but again, is what it is. I will say I was glad to see the big return, gave momentum, but we just couldn't do other stuff on Saturday, which was ridiculous for this team. So with that said, what do I think? Now, I will openly admit, for those that don't follow me on X, or maybe you didn't see it on X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it. I did tweet after the game, fire him now, and it's been deleted because I said, you know what? You didn't do that last year. You saw it through, saw what happened. Well, I did say 9-3 is the bar this year. With the way things are going, I don't see that happening. I think this coaching is a comedy of errors, and it doesn't sound like much is changing, but we will see. Definitely step up in competition going to Death Valley. Before the season, I did a whole video how the Gators should, in theory, and I still stand by it, in theory, with good coaching, Florida should start 4-0, and now it's looking like Florida's going to start 1-3. Why? Because we're not seeing things like the influence of Russ Callaway with his offense. We have seen pretty good defense. You take away the last drive of the first half and the last drive of the second half, and the last drive of the second half, of course, being a key one, but that also includes some stupid penalties, at least one, and then a very big misholding call, but you also had a guy who could have made a tackle. But you do that, and you're talking USF, the defense gave up 10 points because I'm not going to count the 2 points or the safety. And then also 3 of those points, the first 3 points, coming off a stupid procedure penalty where USF didn't sub, and for some reason we tried to. Subbing, I'm going to hold on the coaches. I don't think any player calls their own number and says, I'm going in the game now, coach. I'm not going to pay attention to what the other team's doing. I believe that's all coaching. If players think they can just do that on their own, then that falls on coaching as well. And overall, this team I do feel like should have won this game, even with no Dallas Wilson or Caleb Banks, which I think those do hamper a little bit Florida's defensive line and receiving room. But I still think there's plenty of talent there, especially beat South Florida. And again, this was not the best South Florida team last year, and they've made a jump. And if you're telling me South Florida and Alex Golish are able to take a bigger jump from last year to this year than we are, returning what we are, then that is an indictment on this coaching staff that we can't make that jump. And then this weekend, we'll talk about it when we preview LSU. If you can replace what we've talked about, 4 offensive linemen, your best tight end ever, 4 of your top 5 receivers, your defensive line, lots of members of a bad secondary, and we can't take advantage of that. That is coaching. Miami, similar transition. We detailed it in the preseason. You can't take advantage of that with everything taking over. That is coaching. So I will wait to see if we go 8-2 the rest of the way. If we do, you know what? Fine. Would I still want them gone because we see these bad starts every year, and will it probably cost us? Yes. Do I think 9-3 is likely? No. But I will wait for judgment, and that's why even though I said fire now, I deleted the tweet. I'm like, you know what? We'll watch it play out. Do I think it's going to play out well? No, I don't. However, we'll watch it play out. I couldn't help but just laugh as we were walking out of the stadium, and it is what it is. I'm still going to be in Baton Rouge this weekend. I'm still going to be in Miami the next weekend, and I still have my flight booked, even though my flight times have changed. I still have my flights booked to go to Texas for the A&M game, and I'm going to support these players. I may not fully be bought into a coaching staff, but I am bought in that these players have the capability and the talent to do a lot more than they have so far. I do think that some of the schemes and clock management ideas are holding this team back. So we will see. And one last thing about clock management that just popped into my head while we're talking about it. We took 2 meaningless timeouts. I don't know if anyone caught it. I haven't listened to too many other people talking about the game. So if you heard this on another podcast, hey, great minds think alike, I guess. But with, I believe it was 22 seconds left, Florida takes one timeout and then takes a second timeout with like 18 seconds left. I'm not sure how this makes sense. And anyone who can do the most basic of math, please tell me if it makes sense. You got a 40-second play clock. So, at 22 seconds, you call a timeout. It's second down. You call another timeout. Well, it's first down. What are you doing? Because no matter what, on the next play, USF could essentially take a knee and still let the clock go down to 3 seconds and kick the game-winning field goal, which they did. Why would you not at least save one, if not both, at that point, knowing you can't get the ball back? It is mathematically impossible. It is child's math that with less than 40 seconds, you calling timeouts does nothing to help get you the ball back. Maybe if you had called earlier and the defense made a stand, but at 22 seconds, it doesn't matter. You just wasted 2 timeouts because you could have waited for them to take that timeout at 3 seconds. And then, because it didn't matter at that point, use both to try and freeze Grammatica. He's probably not missing. The next generation Grammatica is not missing in the swamp. However, I think that's a better use of the timeouts than saying, let's just randomly do it 22 and 18 seconds. And it's only, second and whatnot. Hey, whatever. And I know someone may say, well, if you take that second down after the next play and you take it after, you second and 4's left, take it, timeout. Now we're going to get it. It's like, no, there's no getting it back. I think it's a wasted timeout. And I just think that's a good example of what we've seen from the coaching that is kind of tragic, but it is what it is. We'll see what happens this season. You do have me saying I'm not going to call for a head till we see loss 4. Now, with that said, that could be as early as the first game after the bye. Texas Longhorns come to town. I do think this team will probably pull off things that surprise us in good ways. I do think this team is capable of beating LSU. I do think this team is capable of beating Miami. The thing is, are we going to do things to do that? Or are we just going to say, you know what? Let it ride. And we're going to keep doing the same stuff that has lost us games at Vanderbilt. We've done the same stuff that has given us 0 wins on the road against a winning record team. We're going to keep doing the things that gave us a loss to a bad Arkansas and a USF team at home. I can't say a bad USF team, but I don't care if they're a great team. You've got more talent. You're returning a ton of production. No reason to lose this game. But good for USF and getting the big win. I'm not trying to take that away, but it's just frustrating. And I stand by something I put on my personal account during the game where I said, I still think we come back to win this. We didn't. But the length some people are going to justify a poor performance is ridiculous. And that I do stand by. But with that said, we're going to see the season through together. So thank you all for listening. And as always, go Gators.